Welcome to a slapshot edition of the Russian Rulers podcast. Today's subject, the Oprichnina. Over the past few podcasts about Ivan the Terrible, I talk about the Oprichnina, but really, what was it? Was it the brainchild of a raving madman to gain revenge for the years of abuse he suffered? Or was it a brilliant yet brutal measure that needed to be taken in order to rid Russia of the structures in society that held it back from being a powerhouse in world politics? As you shall see, the answer is yes, to both. First, let's start with answering the question, what was the Oprichnina? Ivan, you might remember, had left Moscow to go to his hunting lodge, and had basically told the people of the city that he was going to abdicate the throne. He made demands that the boyars agreed to, that a portion of Russia would be made his sole domain. This sectioning of Russia was not a continuous division of land, but special sections carved out, including a part of Moscow. The other part to be under control of the Boyar Duma and the official old group, and it was known as the Zemshchina. The Oprichniki, the political police, who were part of the muscle needed by Ivan to carry out his orders, were typically lower-class citizens, many of whom were criminals. Dressed in black, riding black horses, their numbers went from 1,000 in the beginning to over 6,000 at their peak. They had one sole purpose in life, to destroy anyone considered to be an enemy of the Tsar, and that they did with relish and zeal. I've already covered what they did in my previous podcast on Ivan, so I won't belabor the subject, but I will say that what they did was not only to take from the boyars, but also from the peasants, common villagers, and merchants. They just took what they wanted, and when they wanted. The fear they drove into the hearts of all Russia was incalculable. Now, must be said, the Oprichnina was not a unique moment in history, or strictly a Russian event. Louis XI in France and Henry VIII in England were constantly at war with their respective aristocracies. Also, some historians like Platonov believe that Ivan really tried to enact mild reforms to change the boyars' control over the Russian lands, but that he was forced to use increasingly cruel and brutish measures because the initial measures he used were rebuffed and mostly ignored. Platonov also believes that one of the main reasons Ivan was forced into the Oprichnina was the fact that many of the descendants of the appanage princes gathered their own taxes within their estates, and they had the exclusive right to judge others. If Russia was to have a centralized and efficient central government, this system had to be shattered completely. Now, when the Marxists controlled Russia as the Soviet Union, there were many revisionist theories of Ivan's time, as Joseph Stalin used him as an example, and the Oprichnina, for his wholesale slaughter of the people, with his numerous purges. They felt that Ivan was totally justified in his actions, as it was a class struggle that the Tsar was fighting, and that he was fighting it on behalf of the people. Now, whatever side you're on, there is no denying the fact that the Oprichnina was a particularly brutal period in Russian history. It, towards the end, weakened the Russian state and left it open to invasion and losses of lands that were all won early on in Ivan's reign. Some, like the great historian Ryazanovsky, say that the Oprichnina, quote, looked like as if a civil war were raging in the Muscovite state, but a peculiar civil war, for the attackers met no resistance. By 1572, Ivan had enough and proclaimed the Oprichnina over. But the remnants of the separation of the two states continued on for about another 3 years until 1575. But by that time, the damage was done. Tens of thousands were tortured and murdered, and whole parts of society uprooted and changed forever. The Oprichnina did one thing, though. It did cause the boyars to lose much of their power over the country. This was to be devastating during the time of troubles, but it did help to allow the Romanov dynasty to keep power centralized and move the nation of Russia forward. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's short podcast. Now don't forget to visit the iTunes App Store and download the Russian Rulers app. And please visit the websites at russianrulers.podhoster.com. Become a Facebook friend at Russian Rulers History Podcast. Ask a question. Please make a suggestion and leave a comment. And as always, до свидания и спасибо большое.